Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Lopes on Movies. My name is Joey Lopes, and today I will be joined by Connor and a very special guest, but I'll get to that in just a moment. So, 2 weeks ago, we did an episode on a film called Say My Name, which, to recap, was a direct-to-streaming movie that Connor had seen an advanced screening of back in 2017. It finally got its release in June of this year, so we thought it might be fun to check it out and see how it may have changed from its initial test screenings. We both liked the film quite a bit, and after finishing our review a couple weeks ago, I decided to reach out to the film's director, Jay Stern, to see if maybe he wanted to come on the show for an interview to talk about the film and maybe help answer some of our lingering questions. So I'm happy to say that is exactly what we're going to be doing on today's episode. So without further ado, Jay, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thanks.
All right, so Connor, let's just get straight into these questions, and okay, we will begin. Okay, so to start, could you maybe tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got your start in filmmaking?
Sure. I mean, I've always wanted to make films from a very young age. Like as a kid,
Mhm.
I got a Super 8 camera and I was doing claymation, stop motion, special effects. I wanted to do special effects
Mhm.
for a long time because grew up on Star Wars, and then I sort of graduated to Godzilla movies, and
Mhm.
that's what I wanted to do. So I always had an interest in that. So I ended up coming to New York for college, and then sort of my horizons broadened into what movies were.
Sure. Did you go to
And I got
school for
interested.
film specifically?
I did. I went to NYU
Okay.
undergrad for a year, and I dropped out. It was a horrible experience. I
Oh,
do not
really?
recommend NYU. To any listeners out there, don't pay NYU money. It's not
Yeah,
worth it.
I'm pretty sure
Um,
Paul Thomas Anderson said the same thing.
yeah. It's I ended up going to a film program in Vancouver, which is a technical, like a trade school. I went there for a year. And that was a phenomenal program. You're shooting 60 millimeter and 2 weeks into the program, and a lot of hands-on exposure, a wide range and sort of diverse group of people there in terms of ages and backgrounds. That was great. But that's not a college. It's a different program. And that was good. But in some ways it was good. In some ways, there are different paths into
Sure.
filmmaking.
Yeah.
You can use school. Some people like it. Some it's not necessary at all.
Sure.
No. And I say this as a film professor.
Yeah,
It depends
right.
on what you want to study and how you want to learn it.
Yeah.
But moved to New York, and it was at a time that it was really hard to make films more than today. It's hard today too, but this is like pre-digital revolution, so I couldn't like get my hands on film, and video wasn't producing stuff that was really of decent quality. So I ended up doing a lot of theater. I met some actors and sort of honed my directing skills doing plays and musicals, and
Mhm.
then eventually, once the technology caught up with my ambition, I was able to start making films.
Awesome. So you mentioned that you also directed theater. I'm just out of curiosity, like, how does that differ from directing films in specifically, I guess, because films obviously have this entire other dimension with the camera that you have to worry about. But how does your process kind of change when you direct theater versus films?
Well, it's really, really different in so many ways. The similarities are that, yeah, you're telling stories with like people in a space, and you are directing an audience's focus and attention in terms of your stage picture and
Hmm.
images that you're creating and that kind of thing. But theater's really about the rehearsal process. It's
Hmm.
being in a room with some actors and working on the script and coming up with ideas and then trying to replicate that, what you come up with, and making choices there. Um, and ultimately, when a play goes up, yeah, it's hard for me to watch plays that I do because they change from night to night, right? Things happen that are different, and like if you're a film director, you're after some sort of perfection. You want things just a certain way.
Hmm.
But theater is an actor's medium and it's a writer's medium, whereas filmmaking is much more of a director's medium.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, I do think the collaborative process is similar on both in many ways, although theater seems to be naturally more open for collaboration, like at least historically so. And I've been able to bring that to my movies, though. I work with the same cinematographer, and I tend to be pretty I'm always making the final decisions, but I run a pretty open set in terms of actually, having people contribute
Sure.
to it.
Cool. Cool. So, what were some of the filmmakers and films that really inspired you, like growing up and even into making films today?
Well, as a kid, it was Spielberg. It was the blockbusters. It was that's the stuff that really, opened my mind. I'm a kid of the '80s, so and I grew up in Alabama as well. So like the movies we had were like, the blockbusters. Every summer I'd be like in a movie theater pretty much all day.
Wow. Okay.
fellow kids were outside playing. That was what so that era was really, really important to me. But when I came to New York, I got much more into art film, and I started seeing foreign films. I'm a huge Kurosawa fan. I thought
Oh God,
his stuff
me
is
too,
just
man.
so tremendous.
We love
Yeah.
to hear that.
And of course, then I realized, Star Wars that's based on the Forbidden Planet. Not Forbidden Planet. Sorry, the Hidden Fortress.
Yeah.
Like
right.
all this stuff. There's a conversation going on here too. And Bergman, I love Bergman. He's been very important to me. I go through stages. I went through a Jean Cocteau stage for a while. I just started watching John Cassavetes movies. I don't think they're very good, but they're really interesting.
Yeah, I actually he's one of those directors that's kind of like a blind spot for me. But
yeah, no, I see what people see in him. I don't necessarily enjoy watching his stuff, but I don't know. I always find if I can learn from a movie, it's worth watching. So
absolutely.
I'm pretty omnivorous,
Sure, yeah, that's awesome.
Let's get into Say My Name. So the movie you directed that just got its release in the States on June 14th, 2019. So I guess what we want to know is how exactly did this project start, and at what point did you eventually become involved to be the film's director? I see that also the writer is Deborah Francis White. It looks like you've collaborated before with her too.
Well, okay, it's actually a fun story about how this movie came about. It's not a typical way that movies get made, especially international movies, with a decent budget. So I went to college with Lisa Brenner, who is the star of the movie and the producer of the film. Actually, we were actually at Columbia. I went back to college many years later. I was at Columbia, and she was in the first play I ever directed, The Merchant of Venice. She was
cool.
Jessica, and we stayed in touch throughout the years. She left school to become a soap opera star, and went to California, and got married, and did a lot of TV and film. She had a lot of stuff going on, and we lost. We were in and out of touch, over the years. And when I did my previous feature film, I sent it to her because I was having trouble selling it and getting out in the world. I'm like, who do I know in California? Who do I know out there that might have some advice?
Yeah, right.
The movie.
Smart move.
She saw it and she said, "Oh my God, this is amazing! I love this movie. This is exactly the kind of stuff I want to do. You'll never sell it, but let's make a movie together." And she's at a point now where she's she was telling the story about. She tells the story about once you hit 40 as a woman in Hollywood, and your birth date's on IMDb, you stop getting phone calls and you stop getting to do the fun kind of exciting roles, and for her it's also she always wanted, everyone was always trying to get to do nude scenes when she was younger, but now she's at an age where she wanted to do that kind of stuff, and no one was calling. So she wanted to do a fun, kind of movie where she could do the kind of role she wanted to do rather than being sort of set aside. And I think she remembered working with me back in the day, and I knew she was a classically trained actor, and we were like, let's do something fun. And meanwhile, my friend Deborah Francis White, who's a British comedian, writer, performer, I met her doing improv back in 1999.
Oh, okay.
On a trip in Amsterdam. My comedy improv group I was working for was doing shows there. She had written the script Say My Name, I think back in 2008 or something. It was a long time ago, maybe 2010 or something. But she wrote it to take place in America. It was commissioned, or it was on spec for some American producer. And she showed it to me, asking if I guess she wanted to make sure it was Americanized enough that it didn't feel foreign or nothing felt out of place.
Okay.
Because she hadn't written an American script before. And I immediately wanted to do the movie. I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Please let me direct this movie. And she said, well, I can't. Someone else is doing it. It's for another producer. And that script never got made. It almost got made in France and almost got made in Britain, but it never happened. And then when Lisa and I were looking for something to do together, my wife, who's also a writer and a colleague of Deborah's, remembered the script and asked, maybe it's available, and it was, and Lisa immediately loved the part, and we worked the script quite a bit to develop the role of Mary. There's a whole subplot of why she's on the island that was not in the original script. That was something that we worked on with Lisa.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's interesting. So I was at one of the early advanced screenings of this. I think I saw it in November of 2017. And
which theater were you in? Were you in the Sunshine or the?
I was, yeah. It was the Sunshine.
That was the very first screening we did of it.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So and I think there were some like post production process changes too that I think might have happened from the second time that when I finally saw it when it did come out, and there was a decent amount of time in between. Yeah, so I did notice that too. So that was one part that I was wondering too about the kind of the subplot with Mary's motivation at the end. So that wasn't in the original script, you're saying?
No, that was not.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting.
Interesting. All right. So let me ask you. So, Say My Name has been kind of described as like a modern take on the screwball comedy. And I believe you mentioned in a previous interview, I think His Girl Friday was an influence. Were there other films or filmmakers that influenced you on this one?
Um, well, I'm a big Preston Sturges fan. I think a lot of his stuff is really fun. I guess it's kind of it's not exactly a screwball, but I guess there's some sense that is there's a modern take on it in some ways.
Hmm.
And I remember Barry Sonnenfeld. You know him. He did Men in Black. He's a
Okay,
DP
yeah.
who went on to direct things. I saw an
Mhm.
interview with him years and years ago, and it really stuck with me. Where he talked about the two shot, the idea of why screwballs are so funny.
Hmm.
And screwballs, what the 1930s, 1940s,
Yeah.
fast talking,
Right.
about all the sexist movies,
Hmm.
usually with Cary Grant, this guy's in.
Yeah, right.
But he mentioned this two shots that you have action and reaction in the same shot. That they tend to like let the actors kind of have these moments where they bounce off each other, and rather than relying on editing for that, you're relying on the time between the performers, and it just becomes much funnier to see someone reacting in real time rather than cutting, around
Yeah,
that to
sure.
build the
Yeah.
thing. And I generally, because again, my background in theater and my background in also in doing low budget indie movies where you have no time and you kind of have to get everything in as few shots as possible.
Hmm.
Um, that sort of style seemed natural for this movie in that you could actually, do less cutting and have the timing and performances, really really land
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the
I
shots.
noticed that. I think especially that first hotel scene in Say My Name is in the very beginning. It feels very much driven by the actors' performances and letting their rhythms kind of dictate how everything's going. So that definitely makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. It worked very well.
And that's what we had to
Yeah.
work with. I mean, there's no special effects, there's no spectacular imagery in the film. Like what we have though is the performers, and I think that was what
Yeah.
really our casting was. We were very fortunate with our casting. We've had some great people, and that letting them do their thing and staying out of the way is a great way to direct a movie. I think if you have the right people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I guess I was just wondering. So like, what kind of did any what? I guess you already said about how the that one part was added to the script after for Mary's character. But were there any other like things that changed through the process? Because like I saw almost a finished product in 2017, and the film I think went through the festival circuit like overseas in like 2018, like maybe a year later. So were there a lot of different changes that were going on through it, or like what was it? Just like recutting, re-edits,
Well, after
or
the test screenings, there were some re-edits to the movie, and
hmm.
some things were kind of yes, some things were swapped out and some things were cut down. Um, I don't know
Hmm.
if you did you notice any difference in the movie from when you saw it? And can you, in your head, is there anything that you?
uh well, there's one thing that I noticed right off the bat, which were the title cards that were coming up, like between like certain sections, which I think really did a good job of showing where Mary's character is at a certain point, and it kind of it. My whole thing when I first saw it was I enjoyed the whole thing, but it was that I didn't quite understand Mary's total motivation throughout the story, and it like when she was shifting between the characters, and then like to for the lead up to the final conclusion for her character. But I think with adding the title cards, and I think there might have even I could be wrong about this, but I think there might have been some shots added, or maybe some different things that I didn't see the first time to like really like put in the emphasis that she's going to see like this person later on in the film. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm not sure.
They're two big changes, and you're right on this actually. Um,
Okay.
Okay.
the title cards we added after the first screening, and that was because um, that was for two reasons. Well, the main reason actually was though, you know, the first 15-20 minutes of the movie takes place in this hotel. And
Right.
and some of the comments we were getting from that screening was like, oh, people really were worried at a certain point that the whole movie is taking place in the hotel. And we had
Hmm.
no way of telling you that. right? No way the audience who doesn't know the movie doesn't know this, and they're like, oh gosh, you don't want a whole 90-minute movie in a hotel room. It's dreadful. So the title card, the first one says, chapter 1, the hotel. So that's telling you, you might get out of there. And then at the end too, when the movie doesn't end until Mary's story is resolved, and people were thinking the scene right before that the movie was over, right? When the whole scene in the church happens, and
Yeah, right.
and so that this extra title gives you a sense, oh, we there's still another chapter, so you're willing to go along for another 10 minutes or so of the movie. So the title cards really helped with that structure and making that more obvious. And the other big change was that we actually shot a little scene that was not in the first screening. We went to LA and shot
Really?
a little scene with Lisa.
Was it? It was the scene with her in the bathroom. Was it
That's
that one?
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
See,
that was the one
was...
scene that I was thinking after Connor had mentioned he thought there might have been some changes. Like, that one I could see being a reshoot. There's enough like it's a simple enough location. It just has one actor in it. That's all it is. That could have been one. Because I remember like when I first watched it, because Connor had told me about that advanced screening he went to and some of the thoughts that he had.
After the NDA was
of course
after the film was released.
Yeah, after the film was released. And he had mentioned to me about all that, and I was trying to like think in my own head, even not knowing what had been added or changed, if there was anything, whether or not anything could have been. And like I didn't notice any like weird problems with understanding her motivation at the end. Everything felt very like set up and it made sense. So it's funny to see that some of that actually was as a result of just getting audience feedback and understanding how they
it's just also just making sure that, because that was again something we added to the script. It wasn't inherently in there, and then we realized that there's a certain kind of twist that audiences would jump for, and they won't, they won't, and audiences were split on it too. I mean, the movie worked in the first version you saw, I think, very well, but this idea that it needed to be more of a finally when we find out the truth of what her story is, rather than oh, what? There's a story?
Right.
Having a moment of her sort of raw and going through an emotional moment by herself in the middle of the movie gives it, oh, there's something to her that we need to find out. There's a sense of expectations. Therefore, when it comes up later, it lands sort of firmly. It also shows us early in the movie, like not early, but halfway in the movie, that her fast talking veneer, this this toughness to the character, that part of it is a cover, or that it's a protective activity, that there's something sadder or darker with her story, and that sort of then informs the rest of the movie well too. So that was a really smart addition to the movie that came up through the conversations we were having after the test screenings.
Yeah, I absolutely noticed it too. Like my impression that I got from that was the only thing that I noticed from the first screening, and because I liked it all the same, the first run that I saw, but I didn't notice that at all the second time around. So that's very interesting. Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
awesome.
and it's just one little drop in scene. One little thing that makes a huge change.
Yeah.
But it's not, it's kind of it's amazing power of like movie storytelling, that all you need is a little something. You take the audience by the hand for like 10 seconds, and then you can do this.
That's so cool. Just so as a follow-up to that, just as an artist, I know it can sometimes be difficult to like make changes to your work if there's things you're attached to, especially if the things you're attached to or what you're being asked to change, you might not really want to. Was there anything in Say My Name that you were like reluctant to change or remove? And even if not, like how do you strike a balance between kind of accepting that feedback and staying true to what your intentions are with the movie?
I'm always happy to make changes. I'm always happy to make cuts, and I'm not precious about my work. This was a bigger movie in terms of the money was coming from somewhere else. I wasn't producing it, and it was being run by a company that had an interest in making changes to it. So I did not agree with a lot of the changes that were made in the movie. I mean, I don't have director's cut on this.
Okay.
But the most important thing is that even with that there was a lot of respect for the story and the movie on all sides.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there are choices that I don't want to make in the movie, we're also serving the same film. And I've had people who've seen the early versions and the later version, and people who worked on it, what the changes are, and the writer also, the changes that have been made. Some of the ones weren't necessarily her choice either. But the movie still is the movie we wanted to make. We didn't break it,
Mm-hmm.
and there's always been differences of opinions in these things.
Right. Yeah.
and there's nothing wrong with that. To a certain degree, you have to trust your instincts as a
Mhm.
filmmaker. And so my instincts weren't necessarily the same as the producers, but producers are always going to win that
Yeah,
argument.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the nature of the exchange.
Mhm.
So all the test screenings are done. It went through the festival circuit. So now, as an independent filmmaker, like, what's the next step? Like, how do you guys approach distribution on this one? At least in America, the film ended up to rent on Amazon. I think that's the way you can see it right now.
Yeah, Amazon, iTunes, and video on demand. There's a whole bunch of video on demand services. If you go to saymynamemovie.com, you can see all the places where it's currently available in the States. And then it's green for a couple weeks in some theaters too, and across the country.
Right. Okay. So I guess, was that the goal from the start? Was there a thought to have like a like some kind of other like distribution, or is this the like how it happened, where it goes to?
Yeah, I mean, the goal was always to have some sort of theatrical distribution,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
you make the bulk of the money online and on demand and that kind of thing. And then international distribution is in the works as well. I mean, I think
Mhm.
obviously it's a no-brainer that the movie should be screened in the UK because it's a British movie.
Yeah, right.
It
Right.
has a British cast. And so they're working on that. The distributors are going to markets and doing all that kind of stuff to get it streaming and shown in places. And
Mhm.
Deborah Frances White, the writer, she's a bit of a rising star in Britain right now. She's really well known and well regarded over there too. So hope is that
That definitely helps.
she'll be able to using her name is going to get some attention
Hmm.
for the
Sure.
film as well. But that's it. I mean, the movie's out in the world now, so the rest is just hopefully all of your listeners go out and rent it on Amazon.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. We cannot emphasize enough that people should see this movie.
Yeah.
This is very much worth it.
Yeah,
Thank
that was my initial thought. Like after watching it, because we'd seen it on Amazon, and the reason we found out about it was just because, again, like just by chance, Connor had attended this advanced screening. So I watched it and was like, man, like I want people to see this. This is like it feels unique in the landscape of movies today. It's the kind of thing that I think, and we had mentioned this in our review a couple weeks ago, that it would have been a much easier sell probably like 30 years ago, like maybe in the 90s, when especially when romantic comedies were still very like bankable. But theaters today, it feels like the only things that get into theaters and have like wide distribution are like superhero movies or horror movies or like a studio comedy or that sort of thing. And the market for theatrical distribution it feels like it's lessening.
Yeah, no, it's really hard out there for independent filmmakers, and it doesn't matter how novel or interesting and how good your movie is. I mean, this is my
Mhm.
fourth feature, and it's not. None of them have been, easy at
Yeah,
all.
I'm
There's just
sure.
so
Yeah.
much
Right.
material. Obviously, I mean, one of the great things about democratization of filmmaking is that everyone can make a movie, but then if everyone's got a movie, how do you get it seen?
Yeah.
And then this idea of the franchise movies are guaranteed, and that's where the money goes.
Mhm.
So it is challenging, but I mean, again, I think like anytime any of you can go to film festivals and see what's playing there, or look for, there's a lot of on-demand services where they have the independent films. It's always good to look and support those things, because you'll find a lot of interesting things out there that sort of are worth your while.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting how you can kind of have these like hidden gems that you might not have heard of. And just out of curiosity, was there ever any thought of like, and maybe this is something down the line, but I'm not really sure how the distribution angle works. Was there a thought of getting it onto like a service like Netflix or Amazon Prime specifically, where people are paying for a subscription so they don't have to pay like a premium just to watch
Oh
the
yeah,
movie?
definitely. That's in the works. I mean, the idea is like the stage this works normally is you release a movie theatrically, and then it might be on demand,
Mm-hmm.
and then it might
Mhm.
be on Hulu or Netflix or one of those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
So where we did this day and date thing, which is the model that this distributor is doing with their indie movies, is that they release them in limited number of theaters and online at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And the advantage to that is if you're on demand, on video on demand, any of the services where if your movie's already currently out in theaters, you bump to the top of the list.
Okay.
And our movie begins with an S, and no one's going to know to look for us or find us. But an idea is that having a theatrical run of the movie at the same time as the release bumps you higher up in those
Okay.
in those things. So,
Yeah, that makes sense.
so rather than do theaters and then on demand and then Netflix, we did theaters and theaters and on demand at the same time.
Mhm.
A lot of movies are doing this now, apparently.
Okay.
And then the goal will be like we run in those services for, I don't know, 6 months or so, or as long as people buy them on those, and then after that we could get a deal to be on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or something like that. So
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
in the works, but I don't know. I'm not really involved in the distribution
Sure.
timeline
Yeah.
for this, but I've been told that that's one of their priorities, and I think, so hopefully you'll be able to find one of those down the road.
Cool. That'd be great.
Do you have any other new film projects in the works? Like, what are you working on now? I know you said you're also a professor, so is that taking up most of your time right now?
It's summer, so I got all the time in the world.
No, that's true.
I'm working on a new movie, actually, a new project at least. When last time I was in London for a screening, Deborah and I were chatting about a story that I had, something that happened to somebody I knew, and then she sort of spun that out and thought, oh, we could take that idea and turn it into, there could be a story somewhere in that idea. And so she's working on a script right now that we're going to be doing a workshop of later this summer. So maybe there's a new movie we're going to have out of that. And then I'm working on something else too. I have an idea for something that I've been trying to write for a while and having trouble with. So I have a friend of mine working on a script here, and that would be a real sort of New York low budget indie movie. That would be something we could put together pretty quickly.
Cool.
So we'll see. I mean, I'm hoping that getting Say My Name out there is going to just open some possibilities and opportunities for more.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think both of us liked it enough to want to see more.
Great.
All right. So just one last question, and pretty standard question for this sort of thing. What advice would you have for anybody out there that wants to get into filmmaking, especially as like an independent person, but doesn't quite know where to start?
Don't do it. It's a horrible life.
Good answer.
I know. I mean, the honest answer, it actually is the honest answer, but the flat answer is going to be just start making your own things. You have to make your things. You can't get better or can't be seen if you're out there trying to find ways to make stuff. You got to be telling your stories. You got to be shooting. It's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for a long time. You'll get better at it, but you've got to get a camera and some friends and figure this stuff out. Or even if you know people who are making films, trail them, follow them on their sets. But there's really nothing to stop you from getting your phone and doing a silent movie that has amazing post-production sound that you can do on your computer and tell a story. Make it 2 minutes, and eventually you do 10 of those, you've got a 20-minute movie, and then you make a bunch of those and you have a feature. Just like, don't let anything stop you from doing it. And don't worry about sucking. It's okay if it sucks, because the stuff is, you can delete the files and no one has to see it. But just start. You got to start somewhere.
I love that answer. That resonates with me a lot, I gotta say.
But don't do it. It's a horrible life.
Just get a job, working behind a desk. Your life will be a lot easier.
I think so. Oh my God. I want to know who is passionate about something that's not the arts, is like, you're so lucky.
I mean, the route that I decided to take, at least that I'm taking right now, is working a desk job, and then whenever I'm not doing the desk job, trying to make music and try to work on film projects and that kind of thing. And that is, I guess it's stable, but not being able to work on stuff like 24/7 makes it,
it's hard. Yeah.
makes it a challenge. But yeah, there's definitely.
But I've worked a series of day jobs. I'm teach now, so I mean, I'm still working a day job in a way. Like, that's just the way you gotta. It's like having a habit, a film habit. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I think that will do it. So, Jay, thank you so much for joining us on this. This was a super interesting conversation. I think everyone's really going to get a kick out of this.
Oh, thanks so much for talking to me. I appreciate talking about the film.
Yeah, absolutely. So, everybody, please go ahead and check out Say My Name. It is available on video on demand. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on iTunes. You can find it on whatever platform you're interested in. It's a really, really good movie. It's very unique, and I think it is absolutely worth your time and worth your $5. So everybody, check it out, and we will see you next week.